Hello, hello everybody. Just kind of letting everyone filter in before we really jump in and get started. Thank you all for joining us. We're just going to give it another minute real quick. Um, so we're still letting some people filter in. But thank you all for being with us today. Thanks again for everyone that's joining. As the seems like it's starting to slow down a little bit on people joining in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of jump right into it. But I'm excited to talk with everyone today. So we're waiting for my screen to share. All right, there we go. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm excited to talk to you all today. My name is Benjamin Bentley. You can call me Ben. I'm a senior assistant director of admission for the University of Richmond, and I'm excited to be speaking with you all tonight and covering a kind of a wide variety of topics during our time together. So a little bit about the college search, where to look for schools, how to look, fit aspects, touching on application materials, the importance of things, and some suggestions and kind of general feedback. And then also touching on financial aid as well, and some helpful places to look and things to consider when, looking and thinking about schools. Um, and then once we're kind of wrapped up with everything that we're covering, there will be time for questions. So if you have questions throughout, feel free to drop them into the Q&A section. Be happy to kind of answer those at the end as we're going through. But with that, really wanted to kind of lay the foundation and talk a little bit about types of institutions and also, kind of the college landscape in the United States. So starting off, there's over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States. So there's a lot to choose from, but there's a lot to look at, right? So kind of thinking of things to help narrow down that list and things that you're looking at. So when laying the foundation, you know, most universities and colleges in the United States can fall into one of three kind of categories. So there's your large research-based universities, typically, in the tens of thousands of students, with really strong graduate programs. There are your, public and state universities, oftentimes having high international populations, high populations of students from that state. And again, in those, larger size institutions, typically in the high thousands. And then there's your liberal arts and sciences colleges. So a little bit smaller, in the low thousands, between 1,000 and 3,000, 3,500 kind of is that, cap for small liberal arts and sciences school, but a little bit more of that interdisciplinary education. So you can also see some examples of the types of schools that really fall into these kind of overarching categories. So that's shared to give it really some kind of foundation of the different types of institutions and things that you'll hear as you might be hearing from colleges and universities. If them talking about liberal arts and sciences, you can think, okay, it's a little bit on the smaller size, close-knit communities, probably a little bit more rural campuses. When you hear research universities, thinking of those focuses. And then same with public and state to kind of help put yourself in the mindset when you're hearing from a college or university, what you could potentially expect that campus experience to be like. Um, Thinking a little bit of the types of schools and also being able to kind of begin that process of where to look for universities and what to consider when you're looking at schools. So there's a few places, obviously, there's a lot of ways to look at schools, Google, AI models, but four places that kind of I really wanted to highlight. Big Future, which is through the College Board. They have a pretty extensive, you can filter by different areas, size, location. If they believe they still have the feature where you can even put in like clubs and organizations you're interested in, and they'll pull up universities that might have those. The Common App Explorer, very similar, looking at profile, but it's also helpful because it has deadlines and requirements. Obviously, it's with the Common application, so a lot of schools using that as their main application platform. So some of that additional information. Niche.com, it's a little bit more, you get to hear more from the students. So it's a little bit more about culture, rankings, data. It's great to explore fit. All three of those are fantastic tools, to help you begin your college search and to kind of create your initial college list, right? That larger list that you're like, okay, these have some of the things that I'm interested in, some of those fit factors, which I'll touch on in a moment. Let's start to narrow down. And a great way to narrow down, and probably one of the best things that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic a couple of years ago, is the wealth of virtual tours and virtual options that schools now have. So being able to, virtually talk to a student or walk around campus through a virtual tour, to try to get that sense of campus feel, campus community, campus layout. And I'll touch on that in a little bit as well. So, school websites, virtual tours, virtual information sessions, all fantastic ways to learn a little bit more about schools that you've already seen that kind of have some of the fit factors that you're really looking at and considering. And I want to dive into some of the fit factors that I'm talking about. Now, broadly, I'm going to say two real overarching types of fit. There's the academic fit and there's the social fit. So I'm going to touch on social in a minute, but academic fit. So, one, do they have the thing that you're interested in studying, right? Now, obviously, if you're more on that undecided camp, that's okay. But does it have things that you're really interested in studying? And even the reverse of that, if you are a student that falls into the undecided category or multi-decided, is it a school that only offers things you don't want to study? If you're having trouble narrowing down your academic interests, taking the reverse of it and crossing out the things you don't want to study helps you also kind of narrow that list and look at it. Um, but also academic fit. So the class size, do you want to be in, a large lecture high style classroom? Are you thinking more Socratic seminar where you're, having a little bit more of that faculty interaction? So class fit, class size, kind of the culture around campus that you're experiencing. Faculty relationships are very important in an academic setting. What level of relationship do you want with your faculty member, and seeing if the school offers things like that. So that's where, student to faculty ratio really comes into play if you're looking at a school. Co-curricular learning, right? What are there opportunities for you to learn outside of the classroom? Are there research opportunities on campus to help you dive into the concepts? Are there internship opportunities that the school really is able to help you connect with and look at? How can you supplement what you're learning in the classroom outside of the classroom? And then obviously, postgraduate outcomes, right? Are people who are graduating, doing well, finding jobs? Are there options for OPT, PT extension, things like that? So those are some of the things kind of falling into that academic fit aspect, to look at for a school and to think about and consider as you're looking at schools. And again, helping you kind of narrow down that list again from that 4,000 to a much more manageable size. And then shifting a little bit away from the academic fit, but not too far, looking at the social fit factors, right? Campus size. Do you want a big school that is in the middle of a city, or would you prefer a smaller university that's a little bit on the outside? Do you want a lot of green space? What the size of campus, the physical campus looks like and how it's set up. Because that campus location is very important. Some students thrive in a more rural, surrounded by cornfields campus. Others prefer to be, in a sectionally urban campus where they're in the middle of a big city, and the campus is very intertwined and blended with that city. or suburban, right? Where they have a city that's right beside them, but the campus is a little bit more removed from that. So campus size, and location being two things to also consider when looking. So, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or have a big pond as well, and then kind of where it is. And I would also say, in line with those, climate also, if you are someone who's like me and you hate the cold and you can't do it, the northern part of the United States might be a little bit tough, a little bit more snow up there. Or if you're someone that can't deal with the heat, and the opposite, maybe a cooler climate is something that you would gravitate towards. So thinking about the climate of the area as well, and seeing how that would impact you, and how you would feel. The campus culture and the values of the university. Again, there's a lot of schools in the U.S. Some are religiously affiliated, some are not. Some have a background of that. But there's also other more academic cultures. Is it a highly competitive in the classroom school where students are, hiding books in the library during finals week? Or is it a more collaborative environment where you're going to do more collaborative, conversational work with your fellow classmates and working together? You know, Kind of seeing the culture that the school has, and you can really identify and look at that fit factor when you're looking at the website. Seeing the school's mission, vision, things like that. And then one thing to always consider, especially for international students, is distance and accessibility to home, right? Is it an hour and a half from an airport, to then you'll have to connect to another airport and then take the flight back to Pakistan, or proximity to accessibility to get home. Thinking about the University of Richmond, my institution. We do have an international airport about 20 minutes away from campus, but we also have a train that goes up to DC in about 2 hours, and then students are able to fly out of there. So accessibility from home, something to think about and consider as well. More on that logistical side, right? How am I going to get to school? How am I going to get home, whether it's during breaks and things like that? Um, and when it comes to the fit factors, obviously, I just listed a bunch of things, right? Between social fit, academic fit. I think when you're beginning to create your college list and you're thinking about the fit factors, ranking them in most importance to you, right? Having two to three things that are, non-negotiables for you in terms of fit. And then, having kind of that prioritized list. And then when you're looking at schools, obviously a school that hits every single fit factor that's important to you is awesome, but also knowing that you might have to give in terms of some things, or find different ways around it. But fit is really important when looking and beginning to apply to a school, both academic and social fit. And you should have some components of both with the schools that you ultimately decide to apply to, because obviously it'll help provide you with a better academic experience if you're in a situation in a location that appeals to you and helps put you in your best opportunity and ability for that. Shifting a bit from the kind of quick general search of things and places to look and some fit factors to consider, to the application process and application materials. Um, Noting that some of these things are things that you can't do at this point in the summer if you're one of our seniors, or going into your final year. But it's something, things to think about and consider as you prepare, with that. And some very general kind of areas. Obviously, the common application essay is it's a big one, or coalition essay. Your activities list, letters of recommendation, your transcripts, standardized testing, and then some we'll call miscellaneous items, right? We're gonna touch on kind of all six of these areas in their own right, and really try to give some time and helpful consideration when it comes to things you're thinking about. So when diving into the personal essay, thinking about what us as admission officers are looking for. And before I really dive into that, when it comes to the personal essay, typically there's going to be two essays with a student's application, right? There is your common application essay that goes to every single school that you apply to with the Common App. And then if the university has a supplemental essay, that there as well. So when it comes to those two essays, but we'll focus in on the common application essay a little bit more right now. When it comes to your common application essay, the thing we're looking for is your authentic voice, right? That is your main opportunity to speak directly to the admissions team and the committee who's reviewing your application. Not every single school has the opportunity or the ability to interview students, and it's also some schools don't consider that. So your essay is the time for you to really talk about yourself. So using your authentic voice, um, going a little bit more into a story, right? Not just revisiting your activities list and telling us the same information that we saw 2 pages ago on that activities list, but giving us a glimpse of who you are outside of your academic curriculum, um, but really kind of sharing a story about yourself and um, you know seeing and potentially connecting how you're going to contribute to campus life and community. Now, when it comes to campus life and community, personally, I think that that is something that students should really focus on in the supplemental essays. So when thinking about the common application essay and a supplemental essay for a university, for the Common App, think about, hi, this is me, right? General information about yourself, maybe a story that is, about an experience that's really mattered to you, introduction of who you are in your voice, right? And then, so a little bit more broad. And then, when you're writing a supplemental essay for a university, that's the we one, right? So that supplemental essay is the one where it's good to specify things about the university that you think are important or that matter to you, right? Because there's nothing that an admission officer hates more than reading a common application essay and the first paragraph has their school's name in it, and they get to the last paragraph and it has another school's name in it, right? It feels a little inauthentic because it's being, the same essay going to everyone with some tweaks. So when it comes to the Common App, I say really try to avoid having school names in that essay. And when it comes to your personal or your supplemental essays and activity and items for specific schools, that's where you can lean into showing how you've connected the fit factors, right? Um, yeah, when it comes to your essay, both of them, really, um, you know, we always say in advice is if you were to drop your essay at your school and someone picks it up, no name, no nothing, but you drop it at your school and someone picks it up, they'll be able to go, oh, this is, so and so's essay. I can tell because it's their voice. I can tell because it's them. Um, you know, in helps of kind of that editing process. I would also say when it comes to editing your essay, you know, don't over edit, right? Because if you ask, your parents, your older sibling, your English teacher, your counselor, your mathematics teacher to all look at your college essay, all of those people are going to contribute something, but every time one of them says something, your voice is going to get lost. And again, that's what we really want to hear as an admission officer is your authentic voice as a student. And someone who definitely can't touch on students' authentic voices is our friends Claude and ChatGPT. So please refrain from utilizing AI to write your essay for you. That's something that most schools are really heavily look at, and terms of they don't look on it fondly if a student utilizes an AI tool to write their essay on their behalf. It's a great tool to help you with planning, but that could be a whole other webinar in itself. So I want to shift a little bit into to give all of the components of the application their own time. So the next thing we really want to touch on is your activities list, right? So for the common application, you have 10 activity slots. But you also have 150 characters to describe that activity. So the thing when it comes to that 150 character description, you can talk about what you have done for that. So what does it mean to be the president of this club? Or, what activities did you plan as the head of events, right? Giving us a little bit more context so we understand what type of leadership capacity you may have held with that organization, but also just helping us understand, what it is that you're doing outside of school, right? I think with the activities list, it is things that you were doing when you were not in the classroom. So if you have a job or you help with family responsibilities, you can include those things on your activities list. And always rank your activities list in what's most important to you. Not what you think we want to see first, what's most important to you, right? What matters the most to you, what's had the biggest impact on you, because that's how we read it. As we read it from the top to, the bottom. But it's nice to kind of see what you feel is most important. The question that we always get is it better to have a broad list or a pointy list? Most schools are going to say they want to see sustained involvement in areas that, again, matter to you, right? So sustained involvement could be 2 years of, being a leader in an organization that you found a little bit late, but it also could just be something that you've been doing for a long time, right? And again, as I mentioned, anything that you're doing outside of the classroom. So that could be athletics, family responsibilities, a job, religious activities, or things that you've done during the summer, right? Research programs, online courses, all things that, you spend your time doing outside of the classroom, could be considered to include on your activities list, right? Um, The next one of the things that it's not something you have too much control over, but you do have some control over. So letters of recommendation. Um, the first thing I want to say when it comes to letters of recommendation is look at the school's policy about letters of rec. Every school is different in their count to a degree. For us, the University of Richmond, we require one from a school counselor, and then we will accept up to three total letters of recommendation, right? So that's one from a school counselor and maybe two academic-based ones, right? So that's something specific to us, though, on that limiting to three letters of recommendation. Um, so thinking about and seeing, how many, if there's a cap the school has, if they prefer you to have a specific professor, if you're looking at one of those, state institutions or research institutions that we mentioned earlier, and you're applying directly into a major, they might want something from your mathematics professor specifically, right? So the first thing to say with letters of recommendation is check the application materials on the website for that institution to see what their policy is and if there's a limit or a requirement, right? They might require you to have two. Um, and that really helps you kind of frame who you're asking, when you're asking, and kind of how you're asking, I guess, in a sense. So, thinking about school counselor for your academic context and support, a core subject teacher, whether it's English, math, sciences, that can really talk about your time in the classroom. The optional ones are always great. Again, with letters of recommendation, we're looking and seeing, who you are in and outside of the classroom, right? I think one thing that is um, potentially controversial is, if there's a class that say you're not a maths person, right? And you started maths really low. Your grades weren't great, but you really tried hard, and it might not be the A or A star on your application or on your transcript coming in, but you worked really hard for that grade. That professor that can talk about your perseverance, your drive, hey, this was a challenging subject for this student, but they really put in the work and they really grew. That's also something that's awesome to hear, because, an upward trend is something that's great, but it also shows that you're not going to, give up if something's hard. Now, that being said, it's also okay if you don't have a a recommendation like that, right? I know some people just try to avoid and focus on coursework that they have excelled in, but it's okay to show that you're not perfect in regards to letters of recommendation. Um, Earlier is better when it comes to asking. Don't ask 2 weeks before the deadline because that's a lot of pressure on that person and they might say no. So earlier is better. So, thinking the break before your final year, asking them in person and then following up after they've said yes. Reminder of the deadlines. Again, providing them the deadlines. Deadlines are important. Deadlines don't sneak up on you, you sneak up on deadlines, right? So they're all on the school's website. So being able to provide that to the teacher or counselors to be like, hey, like here are with the deadlines for the schools. Like, just wanted to put that on your reminder. And then something that's really important that I hope a lot of people do is, thanking the people that write your letters of recommendation for you, right? It is a lot of work for them to write multiple letters for students throughout the year. And it's always nice for that thank you because again, we do value what is said in the letters of recommendation, and we appreciate hearing from our colleagues across the desk. So key things with letters of recommendation, ask early, look at the school's policies on the letters of recommendation, and you know, uh, be considerate of who you're asking and when. Um, Jumping in, I guess, to a little bit of a broad category of miscellaneous application items. Really, I'm gonna touch on four of these six. I'm gonna touch on English proficiency and standardized testing in their own right here in a second. But I really wanted to touch on these four things. So, um, some students ask if they can submit a resume. Most schools, the resume is an optional thing that you can submit um, as an additional component. Actually, a lot of these things kind of fall into that category. But so the resume is not something that's required. But if you are going to do one, try to keep it short, well formatted. And if your activities list is longer than 10 activities, pick your 10 most important, and that's what's on the common application, and then you can fill in the other things on the resume, right? If your resume is exactly your common application activities list just redone, that's not providing any additional context or information for an admission office, right? So it's helpful, if you want to submit a resume, if you have an extensive one, think about again what's on your activities list, but think about the resume as a supplement to that as well. Um, some students have done independent research or lab experiences. Um, that's not something that you have to submit, right? If you want to mention it on your Common App, again, it's something that's awesome because it's an experience you have, but you don't need to submit your 80-page research paper that you worked on. One, because that's a lot to look at in an application. Two, it also means they're going to have to take some time away from other aspects of the application. So I think when it comes to research experience, obviously being able to touch on it in the activity section, but also, think about if that's something that's really impacted you, think about that as a potential topic for an essay or, just highlighting the experience rather than submitting the entire research topic to us. Um, in terms of portfolios, again, checking the different schools' policy. Uh, yeah, checking the school's different policies and on portfolios. So whether it's an art portfolio, some schools, again, if you're going for like an architecture or like design or coding, they might ask for a portfolio ahead of time. So check how, again, look at the school's website. It's very helpful there. But sometimes it's also a nice thing to supplement with, whether if you're an artist on the side, that's not what you want to pursue, but it's something you're passionate about, whether it's an instrument or different types of artwork. You can definitely kind of highlight that, and schools have the opportunity for you to submit those portfolios. Again, speaking towards my institution, specifically with University of Richmond. We have an arts portfolio that actually goes straight to our arts faculty for them to kind of review and talk about. So it's something that it's if that's something you're passionate about, definitely think about submitting that. And then the last thing I want to touch on this slide is the additional information section on the Common and Coalition applications. Context is key when it comes to reviewing applications, right? When we review your academic components, we're looking at you within the context of your educational experience. And there's also context that can impact your experience outside of the classroom, right? So if you got sick or you had an experience, the additional information section, you can highlight different things that have happened during your high school experience. Or if you're on a gap year, that's an awesome place to kind of write about what you've been doing during the gap year. But think about the additional information section as a place where you can highlight things that have happened during your experience, or really dive into something specific, that you wanted to mention. Um, when it comes to the two areas that I skipped on this slide, I did say I wanted to talk about them in their own right. So standardized tests, when I say standardized tests, I'm referring to the SAT and the ACT specifically. For standardized testing, many schools are test optional, some are test preferred, some are test blind, some are test required. There's a lot of options of potential testing policies for schools. Um, First thing I'm going to say is check again the school application page and the materials page um, for them for you to see what their testing policy is. And then I think the second, once you understand what their policy is, whether it's optional or required, um, looking at their first year student profile and seeing where your test fits within their middle 50%, or that range that they have of their first year profile. Um, that's really important for, again, context for you to think about who can, who or what they can see when you're submitting the application, and knowing, again, putting your best foot forward in terms of that application. So when it comes to test optional and standardized tests, um, you know, optional truly means optional. If you feel that it is an accurate representation of who you are as a student, you can submit it, right? Um, if you don't feel, it's you could have had a bad testing day or whatever it is, there's 1,000 reasons not to submit it. Um, Institutions that are test optional are not going to sit there and be like, why didn't this student submit? Right? We're not going to spend the time thinking about that. If it is not included as part of the application and you've chosen to opt into not having scores with your application, it's just not something that's utilized in the application review. Um, and again, checking the website and seeing kind of where you fall either within or above that middle 50%. Now, when it comes to English proficiency, this is something, again, to check on the website, as every school's English proficiency policy is a little bit different, but likely they have an English proficiency policy for students whose first language is not English. So when it comes to English proficiency, the TOEFL, the IELTS, and the Duolingo testing, again, checking on the school's website to see which ones they accept and utilize for that. Um, and, kind of considering them separately from standardized tests, right? Now, schools might have ways that that testing requirement can be waived on their page. And there could be a multitude of those. So again, checking for that. But thinking when it comes to tests, SAT and ACT in one category, and then English proficiency testing like the TOEFL or the IELTS in a different category, with the optional one for SAT and ACT. And then most schools probably asking you to send in some kind of TOEFL or IELTS scores. When it comes to those requirements, again, checking on the school website to understand what their English proficiency policy is. one, if there's a requirement for sending in the testing, if there's a way to have it waived in some capacity. But again, not thinking of the TOEFL and IELTS within that standardized testing kind of policy aspect. Um, Shifting a little bit, I'm kind of I want to talk a little bit about financial aid and trying to, and understanding financial aid just kind of as a process. Um, Really, there are two types of aid at colleges and universities. And I see them be used intertwined and like, uh, they're pretty separate. And I want to kind of help, build that understanding. So there is merit-based aid and there is need-based aid. So I'm going to touch on merit-based aid first. So merit-based aid is awarded based off academic achievement, test scores, leadership, or talent. So merit-based aid can be something that is reviewed with your application, or there's a separate application to submit for a merit-based scholarship. So think merit-based aid, typically application-based, right? It is not impacted, usually it does not, is not impacted by your family's financial situation. Merit scholarships vary across university, both in terms of amount, in terms of commitment, in terms of um, process in regards to that. Again, looking at the school's website, most schools will highlight it and whether there is a specific deadline or an application. So again, thinking in merit-based aid, giving specific examples for Richmond, we have two types of merit-based scholarship that a student could be awarded. One is the presidential scholarship, which is a 1/3 of tuition. And the other is a Richmond Scholars Award, which is a full tuition, housing, and meal scholarship. There's no separate application for those awards, but there is a consideration date. So there's a specific date, which is December 1st, for students to submit their application to the university to be considered for that Richmond Scholars Award. Every student at Richmond who applies is considered for presidential. So um, again, trying to think separate need-based aid and merit-based aid in different kind of capacities for what it's looked at in terms of what they're, awarded and kind of how that's calculated. Now, when it comes to need-based aid, I feel like it's a word that is said a lot by colleges and universities, but it's not something that we really dive into to really explain kind of the process of what or need-based aid and demonstrated need specifically. So I really want to dive in a second to talk about demonstrated need, but when it comes to need-based aid, this one is based off of your family's ability to contribute to the cost of your education. So some schools are need blind, which is rare. Again, looking on their application page and kind of their financial aid policies. But so, schools that are need aware oftentimes are going to have you fill out a certification. That certification is not what your family wants to pay, it is what your family can reasonably pay for the cost of your educational experiences, right? Um, Even if you're not sure if you qualify, still good to apply. Again, some schools kind of require that certification of the financial aspect. But diving into need-based aid a little bit more, so you might hear demonstrated need, and wanting to give you a definition. So demonstrated need is the cost of attendance, the total cost of attendance, minus what your family's, your EFC, your expected family contribution is, right? So hypothetically, let's say college costs $10. College costs $10, that's the COA. Your family can contribute $2. So that $8 difference is what would be considered demonstrated need. Um, and that is typically where things are falling into in terms of need-based awards for students. So again, in kind of that grant aspect, but not scholarships. Um, I hope that makes sense. Uh, when it comes to cost of attendance, that's tuition fees, housing, meals. Most schools for international students also have travel costs included. So getting to campus, books and supplies, Cost of attendance is things both directly paid to the university, but also costs that you will likely incur during the academic year. And again, being upfront with those. And then again, the estimated family contribution being what your family can reasonably contribute to the cost of your education. Now, demonstrated need is typically determined for international students utilizing the CSS profile. I feel like I feel like I've said the phrase check the website like 1,000 times during this presentation. But looking at the school's website to see one, if the CSS is required, two, if they accept the ISFAA, they might have their own version of it. Again, every school's a little bit different, but seeing what they required to apply for need-based aid. Again, need-based aid being based off your family's ability to contribute. And then for U.S. citizens or permanent residents, the free application for federal student aid would be something that they would need to submit. But for international students, primarily looking at that CSS profile, the College Scholarship Service profile. Um, yeah, I surprisingly just talked for 40 minutes. That's kind of everything that I had. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I know that my friends from Education USA wanted to say a couple things before we dive into a potential Q&A. Oh, never mind. I misread that. Um, cool. I apologize for that. If you have questions, I'm happy to kind of answer. I know I covered a lot of very broad topics. Um, So if you have questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A section or the chat. I'm happy to kind of answer. Yeah, I see a hand raised. Um, so I think I can. Looks like I have the ability to give you the ability to speak. So
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Acha, I am Lubna Shaukat, career counselor at City School DHA. I just wanted to know that is there a separate application for the Richmond scholarship?
No, ma'am.
Hello.
For us with the Richmond Scholars Program. The student's application to the University of Richmond is what is utilized in review for that scholarship. While there's no additional application, there is a consideration date. So students whose applications are submitted on or before December 1st will be considered for that award. So no, but again, that's very Richmond specific. So checking with the schools for those higher scholarships or large amount scholarships to see what if it is a specific application or if it is something that their application to the university will cover. Um, oh, cool. I'm seeing a couple questions coming in through the chat. So we've got one that is, do universities prefer students that have additional subjects along with their main kind of core subjects or mainly extracurriculars? I think it depends, which is such an admissions answer, right? So I wouldn't say there's a preference. If there are areas of academics, that are interesting to a student and they want to explore them and it's outside of their kind of core set of classes, I don't think intellectual curiosity is something that a school is going to kind of look down upon if a student is exploring out in different academic areas. Where it might be something that they're thinking about, and considering is if that additional scholarship is taking away or conflicting with them taking kind of those core classes, right? But I don't think, intellectual inquiry into areas outside of the core subjects is something that a school would look on poorly. especially if that's something that if you're like diving into doing research or things like that. Yeah. I see another hand raised, so I'm gonna go back and forth, I think, from the Q&A and hand raises. So, oh, I just lost the person whose hand was raised. If you could raise it again, and then I can let you talk or give you the ability to speak again. I just will wait for that hand to go back up. Um, oh, cool. Um, thank you for that. Um, so I see a question about accommodations for overseas. I'm not in terms of accommodations, do you mean like getting to campus? Could you dive into what you mean by accommodations a little bit more? Thank you. All right, I see the hand raised, so I'm gonna let you um, let you ask that question. You're good to go.
Hey Ben, sorry for this profile. Actually, it's my mother's account. That's why I'm speaking from her phone.
Oh, you
Okay,
are all
so
good. Thanks for being
yeah,
here.
yeah. So my question is that I wanted to apply for master's program. I've done undergraduate. So if you could tell me if the process is same for master's application, if it
Yeah.
is scope of the meeting.
Um, that's a great question in terms of graduate programs. Again, gonna be a little bit school specific.
Yeah.
But the thing with that is there's also a lot of options for virtual, in person. So I think it's a little bit school specific in what you're hoping to study within that graduate program. I think, a lot of people in terms of graduate programs do lean a little bit more towards the state or large research-based institutions, just since they have a little bit more of an extensive network in regards to that. But in the most part, application, oftentimes those do require an interview. But again, it depends on the program that you're applying for.
Okay, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, of course. Um, okay. So thank you for the question regarding cybersecurity. That's not something we have as an academic major at Richmond. We do have computer science as a major on campus, but we don't have cybersecurity specifically as a major. There might be some courses or things that you're able to kind of dive into around cybersecurity. It is, computer science is one of those growing majors on campus that we've seen. Do most public colleges have? Um, that's a great question on whether merit-based scholarships are if international students are eligible for merit-based scholarships. There it is. Um, School specific. Again, speaking for the University of Richmond, again, all of our students are considered for the Presidential Scholar, domestic and international. Every student who submits their application before December 1 is considered for Richmond Scholars, and then we will meet 100% of the demonstrated need of all of our students. So it's different per school, and I would check on their scholarship page for eligibility for those awards. Okay, I think maybe three more questions. And then I know Sharbana has something she wants to say. Um, so how can one ascertain which college or university is suitable for oneself? Everyone wants to apply high, but how can one know if he or she will be a suitable fit for that particular university? That's a great question. It's a little bit tough at times for sure. I think the looking at the four areas that I mentioned earlier, like Big Future and the school specific website and niche or niche, looking at those and thinking about what is important to you in a college experience, and then seeing, does the school have the clubs you want? Does it have the size you want? Is it in a place that you want? Doing the virtual visits and doing a virtual information session if they have it. especially if that virtual information session has students on it. That's a great, or if you're able to connect with students in any way, shape, or form virtually with that school, that's a great way to see the culture aspect of it, right? To look outside of the academic realm. Again, narrowing down by like, okay, they have the things I want to study. What's it like to study there? Is a great way to kind of look at that. And I think when building the college list, I know the advice that my friends that are on the counseling side always say is they say 3 to 4 reach schools, 4 to 5 um, schools that you feel you're a really good fit with, and then maybe, 2 to 3 safety schools. So having that list of about 10, but really the bulk of it being schools that you look at and you're like, academically it makes sense, financially it makes sense, it seems like it would be a good place for me, and then being able to narrow down for there. It is tough. I think in terms of looking at academics, again, the first year student profile is a great way to see what the averages kind of looked like for the most recent academic year. I hope that helps, Mahad. Um, okay. I see a couple more questions. Campus life at Richmond. Yeah, that's great. We are a suburban campus, so we sit about um, 15 minutes driving from downtown Richmond, which is the largest city in the state of Virginia. Um, we're more suburban. So our campus is a lot of green space, a lot of red brick, kind of that classic feel, I guess you could say, of a college or university. Um, when it comes to campus life, it is more of one of those very collaborative places in terms of how academics are taught. Small classes. We have a few lecture hall style classes on campus, but those are primarily utilized for final group presentations or guest speakers that are coming in, and not a lot of courses are really taught in those. So it's a little bit more of that kind of Socratic conversation. And then, the campus is beautiful. We're pretty consistently ranked in the top 25 of most beautiful campus, with some cool things changing and happening, but a lot of trees. We have over 10,000 trees on campus. So it's a beautiful place to collaborate and study with others. See one question coming in the chat, and then I'm going to turn it over. Their question, admissions office. I'm going to push myself outside the classrooms. Yeah. So it's kind of a couple part question. Um, I mentioned earlier the sustained involvement in areas that matter to you, right? So if you're just like starting to explore activities outside of the classroom, that's okay. People have late starts to getting involved in things all the time. And it's okay. And kind of, you're able to talk about that, whether it's in your activities or whether it's in the additional information, I've found these interests now. Um, when it comes to, in kind of explaining that and talking about as you're exploring it and things that you hope to get involved in if you're not involved in them now. Um, Part two of the question, being a good fit for the university. When it comes to the University of Richmond, we do a holistic admission review. So we look at everything that's submitted. So we look at your transcripts, we look at your, the not just the grades that you're making, the rigor of the courses that you're taking. We read your essays, both your personal and your Richmond specific essay. Because we do have a supplemental one. We look at your activities list, we read the letter of recommendation, we do a holistic review, meaning everything that you submit as part of your application is weighed equally with that. So it is things that we are, those kind of all of the things that you're submitting that we're looking at, um, and weighing them equally in terms of that. Um, yeah. In terms of the last part of your question, what academic areas or extracurriculars are we known for at Richmond? Academically, we're a traditional liberal arts and sciences school. So our core mission is, the undergraduate educational experience. Now, I will say in terms of programs, the most popular majors on campus every year is either business administration or leadership studies. So, business administration, the Robbins School of Business at the University of Richmond is ranked 17th in the nation for business programs. So, ranking wise, that's one that we're really well known for across the United States, internationally. But something that's really unique is the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. Again, that other, major that's usually in the top two. The Jepson School was the first college of leadership studies founded in the United States when it was started back in the 1990s. So in terms of something that's really cool, there's multiple schools that have leadership colleges now, but we were the first. I would say, while we do the undergraduate experience really well in helping students prepare and be successful in their academic area, right? Because being successful as a biology major looks a lot different than being successful as an art history major. But helping students be successful in their academic area, we are really well known for those two areas in particular. Um, yeah. And then extracurriculars, it varies. We have Division One athletics, so our athletic teams on campus perform very well. Our men's lacrosse team has done performed very well in the last couple of years, as has our women's basketball team. But we're really, we have a lot of strong club sports. We have a lot of organizations, clubs and organizations on campus that perform really well and that students really love getting involved in. Um, yeah. All right, I see two more, and then Trevano, I promise I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you talk about EducationUSA. Um, yeah, of course. Admission fee waivers. That's a good question. For Trevano, and you can tell me if am I going to get a list of attendees? Would that be possible? Because then I can send out an email that has fee waivers for undergrads um, for that, if that's possible. But we can also chat
Yeah, I
offline about
can.
that. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Awesome. And seems like I got one more question, and then I will turn it over. Counselor, I've been submitting all the documents coming up. And I do see that they have been downloaded at university, but still students receive emails from them online again. Counselor email. What was the reason for this? That's a tough question. It could be school dependent. Um, I'm not super sure because it also depends on what the application material might be. I know for the University of Richmond, we require the most recent 4 years of schooling. So, I mean, a student, in their last year right now, and then the 3 years before that, and sometimes that's at another school. So we have, this year, the 2 years before, but we're still missing that first year. Um, it depends on the application material, if it's complete. But I'm not sure what might be the reason for that. I apologize for that really not answer that I just provided. I'm not sure what that might be an issue. It might be an issue with in terms of it being indexed or different things like that. I will note for something along the lines of like English proficiency. Again, speaking just for Richmond on this one, but um, the English proficiency requirement isn't something that needs to be checked off for us to review a student's application, because there's ways that it is waived during the review process. So that could be it, and they're just getting that notification or they're seeing that X on their application portal. There it is. So I'm not really sure what the reason is, and I really apologize that I didn't have a more concrete, helpful answer to that question. Um, Overused essay topics are things you should avoid. I might be the minority. I don't believe that there are overused essay topics or cliche essays. There are cliche ways of writing an essay, which I think is what we um, end up harping on. I've read thousands of essays at this point in my career. I've read so many about students tearing their ACL playing a sport, right? And there's some that are fantastic, and there's some that are the opposite of fantastic, in terms of how it's written. Um, I would say when it comes to picking your topic for your essay, I have two kind of pieces of advice with it. One, if you're struggling to figure out what to write on, the Common Application has 8 different prompts. A lot of people obviously gravitate towards, I think it's number 7 or 8, that is pretty much like free write. But if you're struggling to start your college essay, take some time and just 30 minutes spend on each prompt, just writing, not in the same day, but just start writing about something related to that prompt. And you're gonna have a feeling as you're writing of like, oh, I'm really getting into this topic on this prompt. Like, this is so cool. And you're gonna be able to kind of find your essay that way. And the second kind of piece of advice that I have when it comes to the essay is, again, write something that you're passionate about. Every student's essay is unique. So, I can read 2 applications back to back, and they could have the same essay topic, but they could write completely different stories, right? Um, yeah, cool. I don't see any other questions. So, Shibano, I'm gonna pass it over to you to talk a little bit more about EduSA,
Okay,
I think.
great. Firstly, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to join. I had an issue with my Zoom. It wasn't working on both of my laptops, and I was trying for the past like an hour or so, because I was trying to send a reminder to our students. But anyway, I'm glad that we were able to accommodate the time. Thank you so much for taking out the time and for being so accommodating, with me.
Yeah, no, glad to do it.
So
I'm sorry about
yeah,
technology
yeah.
issues.
No, 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 you're good. It was just surprising because the first time that this has happened. Anyway, I'm familiar with a lot of our attendees for now, so I believe they do know about EduSA. But just to give you guys an overview, so EduSA is known as USEFP, which is short for the US Education Foundation in Pakistan. We're present wherever there's a US embassy, in all countries that there's a US embassy. We are part of the US Department of State, and we do not charge a commission upon admission. We represent all universities in the US, not a particular university or particular set of universities. Our flagship program is the Fulbright program. I am an alumni myself. I did my Fulbright program at the George Washington University, where I pursued a master's in international development studies, and I specialized in climate resilience, sustainability, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning from 2023 to 2025. And now I work as an education advisor here at Education USA Pakistan for the past 5 months. So we also have Lincoln Corners in addition to our advising centers in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. And Lincoln Corners will pretty much serve as American spaces in Pakistan, where you can pretty much use a laptop or a desktop, work, research universities, do like a virtual tour of a university that you're interested in going to, read a magazine, and pretty much use the space to your benefit in working hours between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Fridays. I've dropped down our email in the chat box for everybody. It's lahore@educationusa.org for any queries that you might have, and one of our team members will get back to you. That's it from my end. I thank everybody for being with us here today. We're a little over time, but that's okay. I think everybody had like a lot of questions, and I think it was very engaging. Thank you so much again, Ben. I actually lived in Virginia during my second year. I was in Arlington. I didn't get a chance to visit Richmond, but I know about it, like it's the capital, like in state of Virginia. I loved my time in Virginia. I just think that it's like the best state in the US, because there's so much to do. Fall is so pretty. So many like different restaurants, and if you have a car, so like you're done, like you're perfect to go.
Yeah, I also think Virginia is the best state, but I'm a little biased because I'm from here and
Yeah,
have lived my entire life, almost my entire life here. So, but
yeah,
yeah, Arlington's awesome. But yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity to hang out and talk. And again, I apologize. I am very much a yapper, so I probably caused this to go over a little bit. But I
no, no, no,
appreciate
you're
your
good.
your time as well and coordinating and setting all of this up. And thank you all for your questions during the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I hope that you have a great summer ahead. Is it like nice weather there in Richmond right now, or
It's real hot. It's really,
okay,
it's
it's really
really,
hot
it's
here.
really, really warm right now. So,
Right,
um,
right.
I love I'm a warm weather person, but it's really impacting my lunch walk, because I can't come back to the
Oh,
office wet. So, uh,
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that because I
yeah,
know that DC gets super humid in summer, like it's unbearable. So I wasn't sure how Richmond is.
yeah. Depends on the time. Sometimes it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit with 90% humidity, and that's an indoor day.
Mhm. Okay, okay. We're about to get really humid here in Lahore too. But anyways, have a great rest of your summer, and I hope that we collaborate again and do something else in the future. Thank you. Take
Yeah,
care. Bye.
definitely. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.